Hello and welcome everybody to our latest episode of The Flow, where we talk about everything MCP agents and AI. I am David Jones-Gilardi, and I'm joined today by, well, who am I joined by today? I mean, I guess you guys should introduce yourselves maybe, kind of get that going, right? We'll
Okay,
set up the show. What are we doing? What are we going to talk about?
Slow down. I mean, hey everybody, I'm Carter Rabasa. I'm David's co-host. I'm a pretty regular presence on this show. So and we are joined by Rich Young from Arize. We'll have more for him to say. But it's great to see everybody. We were kind of joking about this on the pre-show. This is technically our fourth episode. So we're still, yeah, we had some technical difficulties our third episode. So it's actually hard. I guess cross your fingers, like we'll see. I mean, we think this is the fourth episode. I mean, we'll see if there's a.
We've been good so far. I think we're good.
It's so good so far, right? Technically, this is our fourth episode of The Flow. As David mentioned, we're here to talk about all things AI, agents, and MCP. Specifically, we're here to talk about it from the perspective of developers, right? So one thing we promise you is that we will not get into philosophical debates about AGI. We're not going to gossip about, what company got acqui-hired or how good or bad the terms were. There are other podcasts for that and other news sources that you can check out. Everyone on this call is an engineer. We all sling code. We all build apps. So that's what we want to talk about. And thank you so much for joining us. So as David mentioned, we're joined by Rich Young from Arize. Don't worry, we're gonna get into what Arize is. I'll tee it up a little bit. I think we're going to talk a lot about observability and how to build applications where you as a developer actually understand what's happening inside of these non-deterministic systems. So just incredibly excited for like the topic. And the specifics, right? Like, okay, great. We'll definitely spend some time on the topic of observability so we get everyone level set, but then we're going to get into the code. Like, how does this actually work? Like, how do you wire it up? But I want to kind of turn my attention to Rich. So this has become a tradition on the podcast where once again, every guest that we have is a developer. So Rich, thanks so much for joining. And actually quickly, where are you dialing in from?
I'm based out of SoCal, so Long Beach, California is where I'm actually.
Oh, nice.
I used to live in Hermosa Beach in the South Bay, man. I did not realize that you were so close to my old home.
Now we know, Dave.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm super excited that we've got three people that aren't located in the Bay Area on the call. Like I live up here in Seattle, beautiful Seattle, Washington. My co-host David is rocking it in the Magic Kingdom of Orlando, Florida.
Oh boy!
And now we've got Rich down in SoCal. So we're gonna have.
I'm gonna put some Disney gear on. I'm gonna be Mickey Mouse next time.
Yeah, you should. Wow, we're actually going to have a technical AI conversation with nobody from the Bay Area. That's totally amazing. I love this. So this has become a bit of a tradition on the show. So Rich, like I've got to ask you, and I ask this of everybody. When was the first time that you wrote a program? Like how did you get into programming?
Oh man, the first time I actually wrote a program.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
When I was a kid. I mean, this is kind of dating myself a bit, but like I was like I was an 80s kid, so I was coding like in BASIC, like in Apple and stuff. Early on BASIC programming.
Dude, Rich, I gotta ask you, did you use one of those books that had all the basic code in it? That it was what I call like the original Stack Overflow, where you'd copy the code into like your QBasic or something like that. And you're like, I made a game, but you just really copied the basic.
I think I did. Yeah, I think we all did. Because you could Control C and break basically any program and kind of just immediately look at basic code. So I think that's kind of how it was. But I was pretty proud of myself. I think I was more like a security nerd because I think the first thing I created was just something where you could log in. And I was like into the graphics, but just ASCII graphics, right? So I kind of winning little thing with like the exclamation point, hyphen, something down, and just repeated it over and over, so you could actually type your name every single time. So I was pretty proud of that.
So was this a computer at your home or your school?
No, it was at home. So we were like,
so your family, they put the money together to get themselves like an Apple IIe or something.
Yeah. I think
That's
it was
awesome.
That's awesome. It's funny. Like I love asking this question. I think Rich and David and myself are all of the similar vintage.
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, look,
I don't feel
depending on how old you are, like the answers are like radically different, right? Like, like I'm kind of like you, Rich. I learned to do a little bit of basic programming on a Tandy 1000, but someone who's in their early 20s is probably like learning how to program on a glitch, or like any like some sort of like modern thing, right? So
right? You can vibe program now, as they say. You don't even need
I know. Sorry. Yeah, this is an AI. I forgot this is an AI podcast. I mean, yeah. Well, that's actually no. It's interesting. There's I know people were like, come on, let's talk about observability. But like, you're right. You're right, dude. I have a really good friend named Greg, whose daughter is literally, and I forget exactly how old she is. I think she's like 8. And he's an engineer, so like I mean he's in the AI space, and he's basically teaching her how to use Claude code and
That's
how to
awesome.
use all these things. And of course for the kid it's fun because like the kid is making like silly apps, right? The kid's making like games, or like little whimsical toy apps that she can then play with, right? But yeah, she's 8 years old, and she's building software. And I guess all of us are going to have to get used to the fact that the definition of developer is going to change.
yeah.
But I mean, it already is changing, right? But that's I don't know. I think generally, my general attitude is that like a developer is just someone who understands how to craft software. And I think like the implementation details don't matter. Like it doesn't
how many of us
matter.
are writing assembly these days? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
it's
right.
the same
Yeah.
argument, right? It just every evolution, it's the same kind of thing,
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So Rich, let's get into Arize, right? Would love to I'm going to just assume that people that are watching maybe haven't encountered Arize yet, aren't sure what it is. So why don't you just kind of give us the TLDR on what is Arize, and what problems is it solving, and maybe even just a little bit of the origin story of the startup.
Yeah, sure. So Arize, as a company, we're super hyper focused, right? In terms of helping the AI builder move faster, right? Deploy with confidence. Really, that's the goal: is to help these AI builders in the space just iterate and develop faster. We are, in terms of the origin story, we have 2 founders that came together. Aparna and Jason. Aparna came from and kind of led the Michelangelo team at Uber. And so she was working on a lot of these problems that we're facing today. So she was like, there's nothing really out there. So she actually kind of built a tool. And Jason, who's who was someone who took his own company, I think it's Tube Mobile, from like garage to IPO. Was also focused in the space, and they actually had competed together. So I think Jason one day came over to Aparna and said, "Hey, we need to join forces, right? Like we really work well together." And they had a lot of overlapping talent and resources, and he convinced her to do it. And we have like a really, really strong founder team that is, I would say, is extremely technical, very focused on the end user, the actual developer. Very, very technical, and then strong, sort of product, roots as well with Aparna. So, yeah. So at the end of the day, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Like, I'm super. And by the way, like, I will totally interrupt you because I'm kind of fascinated by this stuff, right? Like, what was the Michelangelo project at Uber?
So that's an open source project. I think that is part of their just AI machine learning, project that is very popular, kind of open source.
Gotcha.
For AI. And she was a big part of that. So so that in terms of the product we offer, it's an AI observability, evaluation, and kind of experimentation platform. So if you're anybody who's building these days, right, with the millions of kind of tools and frameworks and LLMs that are out there, knows that the landscape's changing, and it's really, really hard with these kind of non-deterministic systems these days to basically understand how things are going wrong, how do you get feedback, how do you improve, right? Very different from kind of the traditional software of how software development cycle of how we used to do that, where everything was kind of like unit tested code, deterministic, very predictable outputs. With LLMs kind of in the mix, and you can effectively, like with non-deterministic outputs, you can get a different answer that could be correct, or maybe it's hallucinated, right, for the same exact question or token inputs into the LLM. And that's where it's really, really difficult to kind of, analyze these things. So it's really kind of a problem that they've tackled. We have really put a lot of effort into this platform we build in our offerings. We have kind of like an open source product that we call Phoenix that folks can get started with. They can just download it as a course, really geared to kind of small teams and developers just getting started, right, and building. And then for the folks that are moving towards kind of deploying these applications to production, and they kind of need a full kind of development and production kind of platform to kind of cover both sides of the workflow, that's where Arize AX comes into play. So we've got kind of two of those covered.
It's interesting. I think, are you familiar with the sort of 12-factor app paradigm?
Not ever, no.
Yeah, it was at least for me, like it was a really influential, almost like manifesto written by a bunch of folks from Heroku. So I honestly couldn't tell you like what year they kind of published this manifesto. It was like maybe, like 2008, 9, something like that. But it's definitely, I highly encourage folks that are listening to go Google 12-factor apps, and you're gonna find a single web page with these 12 factors. And it was at least to some degree like hugely influential on the design of platforms and systems and architecture for like traditional apps. Just think of them as like traditional cloud SaaS applications. And the idea was that like every platform and every app like should basically adhere to these 12 factors in terms of how they were architected, in order to be like cloud native, and in order to be like, whatever, infinitely scalable or like horizontally scalable. So there's a bunch of like do's and don'ts. And it's really interesting. And like I said, it was highly influential for a period of time, and of course, Heroku had a self-interest in kind of publishing this manifesto because, like, unsurprisingly, like their platform like checked all the boxes, right?
Right.
But I mean, it's very reasonable, right? Like I've never heard anybody really have much of a counter argument around the things that were listed. And it's interesting because one of the entries for one of the 12 factors is about logging, and sort of by definition observability. And they have an entire section kind of carved out in terms of like how a platform or how a system should think about handling logs. And I often, to your point, Rich, like it's obvious at this point that like new forms of software just fundamentally like work differently than traditional forms of software. So I often, as I'm looking at AI tooling and the architecture for how these systems are built, I think about 12-factor apps, and I think about like, oh, I wonder like if they had to revise this, right? If they had to rewrite it or update it, or maybe if some smart person, maybe you, Rich, some smart person was like kind of created like the modern sort of like iteration of the manifesto and said, hey, here's like the new set of factors, and here's like the new paradigms for like building these intelligent, non-deterministic, LLM wired systems. Like, here's what they would look like. And of course, there would be a section for observability, because it's like, and arguably, the needs for observability in today's form of applications is like potentially an order of magnitude higher than the old form, because like you always needed
you have this
logging.
extra layer now, right? You've got
but I think it's more like the problem is like you always needed logging, right? Because like even in a deterministic app, like you could just have failures, or like your Stripe payment fails, or like things fail, right? But like in the happy path, you never cared about your logs. Like your logs were really only ever there to help you when things went wrong, right? But now like the surface area of the need for observability is like it doesn't just cover like errors, like it covers an entire spectrum of like arguably like successful interactions, but like but like undeterministically like positive interactions, right? Where you have to dig into these things. Anyway, sorry, I you can tell that I'm super stoked about the topic. But
Are you excited,
I think this,
Carter?
I know, but this is a great transition point for Rich to probably just like take us into how the product works. Yeah, let's kind of sit back and of course, me and David will have like many more questions, but we can probably pop over to the code.
We can do that. So what I think I'll do is just let me share my screen here. Let's see, make sure I can get the share button working. So I think what I did, and David and I kind of worked a little bit on this, but he has a kind of an agent that he built on the back end just in Langflow. And I'll talk a little bit about sort of like, so what are kind of the three pillars, right, of like what do we focus on when you're actually, when we're talking about AI observability? There's kind of like three key pillars, really. The first is observability, right? It's gathering data, right? Log data, it could be trace data, metrics. In our world, we focus on tracing or traces as the mode of data that we collect, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like in the platform. For this demo, we actually built a really simplistic agent. David, I'll let you kind of talk, just make sure, keep me honest on what that was. And you can see the agent, actually, to be honest. I was just interacting with it via API, making calls to it, which you can do in our platform. It's great. There's a lot of good synergies between our platform. We have a direct integration with Langflow, and I'll show you what that looks like. But the first idea is really collecting observable data, right? We need to collect data off the system. Observability is kind of like a concept that's been around for quite a long time. It's sort of really caught fire during that DevOps revolution, I'd like to say 7-8 years ago, when things started to break out into microservices and folks were, you saw a lot of like companies moving to microservices-based architectures, Kubernetes, like that whole world. And so there's this whole kind of like, framework. There's open source standard called OpenTelemetry, which we as a company have been built on from day one. So all of our instrumentation, we have an engineering team focused on kind of, defining some of these standards as well. So in LLM space, you'd be surprised, but like OpenTelemetry is a framework for kind of tracing. And so everything we do is based on OpenTelemetry. We just basically built an OpenTelemetry collector on our end, which can collect and work with OpenTelemetry tracing. But then all the data that you collect around it. So this could be like the LLM input, could be the LLM outputs, right? It's all of this information that you're tracking. That's really useful information, and I'll show you what that looks like. But that's the data that we collect. And that's useful because the next important thing that you need to do in the pillar, kind of this AI observability, is around evaluation. So this is like where we need to basically have ways to gather some kind of signal off of the data that we're collecting to understand whether the agent is performing correctly, whether it's, maybe it's a RAG application, the data that is the answer you're providing grounded in truth, right? Based on context asked, or is it really directly answering the user question, right? If you're using an agent, maybe you have different tool calling that's happening. Is it calling the right tool? And that's actually the demo I'll show you in a bit, because agents are the big thing. Everybody's focused on how do I evaluate my agent, right? Or is it even passing the right, if everything's kind of API driven, is it passing the right parameters in, right? So it's all of this checking of different specific things that you define, right, within your application to tell us whether things are right. And so the methods you can do this are something called LLM as a judge. And so if you're not familiar with that term, just what is the concept of LLM as a judge? It's actually using another LLM, right? A good one that acts by a good reasoning model. You may have to kind of wrap your head around that if you've never heard the concept. But it's using an LLM to judge the output of the first LLM, like your agent or whatever you're trying to evaluate, and tell you, hey, is this thing like correct? Is it hallucinated? Is it, is the user's question, are they frustrated, or is it toxic? It could be kind of, it's a very flexible approach, but you're asking an LLM at the end of the day, hey, judge this for me and tell me what you think the output is. Really cool, just really cool concept. You have any kind of thoughts or comments on that?
Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm smiling because like
I know
I'm
you.
desperately trying to remember this meme of like a rapper. David, do you know what I'm talking about? Like the rapper who's like, "Would you like some of this in your this, like on top of your this?" Like it's kind of like this like recursive. It's not the word this. It's like something else. Like I think people substitute and replace, right? It's like Method Man or somebody. Sorry, I'm like
I
really
don't remember the top of my head.
I'm
Yeah.
grinding the show to a halt, but like, yeah, I mean, like like
Its own tail kind of thing.
I understand why developers would do this. I understand exactly why it makes sense, but like man, this is like being a foundational model provider is like the best business model in the world, you know, because like
For
it's
sure.
like basically like the fallibility of model A can be cured by like introducing like model B, right? Which is kind of
Yeah,
like
it's like structured output. It's the same model, right?
no,
You
I know
use an LLM to create the structured output from the first one that didn't do it, which is
yeah,
hilarious
something
to me.
like that. Yeah, it's great, but like it's all good. Like I think I think we can we can joke about these things, but
Yeah.
pragmatically, like this is kind of like a this is a best practice, right? Like as of like July 30th, 2025, right? And this is really like the a best practice for like what developers like should be doing to solve this problem, and the problem's worth solving, right? So like yeah, sure, you're going to spend a few more tokens on it, but we're willing to spend the tokens because of like all the high grade like capabilities that the LLMs are buying us.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Really.
totally makes sense.
Yeah, and my 2 cents to that would be, like the ultimate kind of way that you're going to do this without kind of this LLM as a judge technique, and you want sort of like the highest accuracy. It's still kind of like humans as like the
Yeah.
most. I would say that we're the most expensive like evaluation metric, which we can do, right? We can take like sort of, annotations, and that's another thing you can do in the platform is you can run these evaluations. Humans can evaluate and read the responses and say, yeah, that was correct or not incorrect, right? That's what like annotations do here. Or you might even get something back, right, from a user feedback, like, hey, thumbs up, thumbs down. That could come into play too as well, right? So, but LLM as a judge is, it is a token cost, but it's a scalable way of doing something really, really cognitively, could be cognitively difficult to kind of like, or expensive to do that for a human to do that, but but you can spend a couple tokens to do it. So yeah, we like it a lot, and it seems like it's catching a lot of fire. There's a lot of popularity around evals in general.
Well, I think today too, Rich. I know we have a fun example, right? But I think there's some. I've been working with evals a lot lately. Totally separate from what this conversation. For my own work, and I've honestly when you bring in an LLM or an agent, obviously that's backed by an LLM, right? When you bring this non-deterministic thing into the mix, is to your point earlier, it's really hard to determine and spend the time and do it in like a machine speed kind of way, right?
Exactly.
To keep up on things and be able to see whether or not, like, hey, is this thing actually giving me the kind of output I expect? Like, for say a chatbot, like a technical chatbot or something like that, right? You want to make sure the thing is helpful. You want to make sure that it's accurate. You want to make sure that what it says actually makes sense, right? All sorts of things. And yes, a human could read it, but it is, I've, like I said, in the stuff I've been doing, it is significantly better to be able to use these kind of systems to be able to do that part for you, so you can just analyze like, what is the outcome? What do I need to tweak?
Exactly. Good points there. Cool. So we have the concept of evals, kind of what you can do. This is all the kind of data that you can collect at the end of the day. There's also code-based evals, which is basically just executing Python code. And sometimes you need to do like structured JSON schema checking, or, hey, is there keyword matching, right, in the string outputs, right? These are more kind of like your standard, more deterministic output type checks that you would want to do. And those are cheap, right, to do that as well. And very scalable. So anyway, you've got evaluations. So you got your data coming in. You need to be able to have that data. You need to be able to observe it. You need to be able to run evaluations. And this kind of like in our world creates labeled data for that allows you to kind of flag or understand where failures exist. And so what's different here is that, from the traditional observability systems is that it kind of stopped there, right? You're getting alerted if your latency increased or if your increasing errors. But here we can actually eval on, things that matter to your application and that are kind of difficult to evaluate typically in other systems. We can take this data and then we can improve it and run experiments on it. So this is the trifecta, right? Is like these two things help to let you run experimentation. And as the concept of that's a little different, right? Because you're actually making changes, you're trying new things. This is like swapping out a new model, maybe changing your system prompt, right? Adjusting it to get some kind of output behavior from your LLM to steer it in the right direction, right? So that you can fix these problems. And that's kind of what our platform focuses on here. Yeah, so hopefully that gives you kind of that, high level. What's AI? What do we do? What's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, why don't we show folks what this looks like, right?
Yeah, and just a quick plug on the integration. So with Langflow, it's really, really easy to get started, right? So if you guys are already Langflow users, you can just drop in a few environment variables into your config, basically. You do need like a space ID and an API key. You can just go to arize.com and I'll send it. I think we'll have like a QR code afterwards and I can share that with you.
Right.
But just go to arize.com, sign up for a free account, get a space ID API key, set that environment variables, and you will automatically get traces, all of the tracing sent from all your agents into a space in the platform. So super easy integration there. And then, so once you set that up, traces flow into the platform. This is the Arize AX enterprise platform. So this is going to be geared towards developers and kind of non-technical folks too. Everything I show you is going to be done in the UI, but kind of really cool here that you have all of your traces here. And if I click into what a trace is, sorry, do you have a question there?
Yeah, no, I think no, keep going, Rich. But I think like the nod to non-developers is interesting in the sense that like everyone who's listening who's a developer is presumably working with like a product manager, right? Or some other not non or who knows, maybe they're working with like a prompt engineer that that is sort of managing their prompts using some other tool or some other system. So I think the idea that tools like this aren't exclusively for like the DevOps engineer that's just trying to like get a stack trace, right? Like there's other kinds of people that want to understand the output of LLMs. I think that's just kind of new, right? Like most product managers didn't care about like whatever the API 500 errors to Twilio that were happening 10 years ago. Outside of the context of like, hey, why is the app broken, right? But it was ultimately up to the engineer to remediate the issue or add like retries and backoffs. But the fact that like in today's world, there's this other members of the team that like actually like want to look at these things and like actually like look at the details. That's an interesting difference between how things used to work. So for instance, like I wasn't going to bring it up, but like observability tools have been around for a long time, right? Like I used to be a very happy Datadog customer as an example.
There's all sorts of things.
But sure, but those tools backwards looking were like laser focused on like platform engineers, right? In terms of like how the experience was built and who the users were. So just hearing you kind of say those words, it kind of makes me realize, because of course, like I think like it's not really an objection, but like I think developers are overwhelmed with like feeling like they need to learn new things. And one of the natural reactions is like, well, do I really have to learn a new thing, or like can't I use the thing I already know for the new thing, right? And sometimes you can, and it's great if you can, right? But sometimes the new thing is just so different that it's simply more productive and efficient to adopt new tools, right? That are sort of tailored to the experience. So
exactly, yeah, good point. And so that's what we've seen as well as we worked. We've got a couple hundred customers and a lot of our enterprises. And the larger the organization, usually you have these kind of technical users and the domain experts too. So like you just said, it requires kind of a lot of expertise from the subject matter experts to tell you sort of, especially on the evaluation side, hey, is things looking correct, right? Because at the end of the day, prompts are the new code is kind of a thing that like a partner likes to talk about too. But prompts are written in English, right? So these subject matter experts, they are product managers, they don't need to know how to code. They can come in and basically start working, with a prompt and sort of come into like our product here. We have a prompt playground, so you can go in from kind of any of these like traces, and you can jump into the prompt playground here, right? And you can start to sort of replay things. You can modify the prompt themselves. You can, choose different models that you want to experiment with,
Oh,
right?
I could see that being pretty important actually, because I mean, so much of I know when I'm building apps, right? Like I've got some models that I generally work with depending on what I'm doing, but I've had the time to spend in those models and kind of learn how they work and feel. But so much of it is getting the right model for the right task, right? And it feels like this is what I'm seeing you do here. It looks like you can actually pick different models, but with the same prompt, kind of experiment a little bit, things like that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I kind of glossed over a little bit the observability piece, but I think for the most part that's pretty straightforward. Hold on, let me. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong project here. We were working a lot of projects there together, David. I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just to kind of like really quickly walk through kind of a trace, right? So if you kind of look at this waterfall of different items here, think of a trace as kind of this encapsulates like an entire user transaction, and then you have these individual spans of work that are happening underneath. I believe LangFlow is all LangChain right under the hood, so I recognize some of these spans just from kind of my own LangChain apps that I've been working with. So this is just kind of like automatically generated from the LangChain kind of code as everything is executed here. The ones kind of like I'll just focus on, you can see there's different spans of work here. There's LLM calls happening, right? In this agent, there are two tools I think available. There's one for getting the current date and then a currency converter. And then this is hooked up to OpenAI, right? As in terms of the decisions. So you can actually kind of like see all of the sequence of events, but there's still a lot going on under the hood, right? So I kind of click on this one because this is the most kind of the one we usually focus on is, hey, what's the LLM?
Yeah, right.
How does it play into this, like, right? So in this case, like you can kind of replay exactly what's happening here. You can see, all right, here's a system prompt. You're a helpful assistant that just uses tools to answer questions and performs tasks. And then the user questions is like, hey, can you, I kind of synthetically generated a bunch of questions in our example, which I'll talk about, but this is, can you possibly tell me what the date is and how much 2,500 pounds, right? So the output of this LLM call that you see down here is a tool call, right? So it actually has two tool calls because intelligent enough to understand from this question that, and it had a list of tools. These, it only had access to these tools, but it said, "Hey, I need the current date tool to get the current date, and then I also need it to this currency converter tool to do this translation, right?" So at least and that's all it's doing is this very specific task of calling the right tool and then providing that as a response to the user question. Pretty neat. So yeah, that's kind of what this particular span is doing. And then you can see the evaluation, and that's the other thing here is these evals that we set up are running on all of these traces as they come into the platform. So these are just like automatically being generated. You can see down here, I'm just kind of expanding more of these spans, but there's these labels attached to
Oh, nice.
all the LLM calls, right, that you see there. So I can kind of see immediately, hey, are things correct? Are they incorrect? I can just filter down and just sort of like break this down. But that's the idea behind that, is you can start to filter down right onto to kind of get a sense for, which ones are failing here, like which ones are incorrect. And I can go in and sort of read the explanation on one of these. So actually,
this is where you were talking about that external LLM that's doing the judging, right? This is where that external LLM comes in and is judging the output of your agent or whatever.
Yeah, correct. So
Gotcha.
here's
Okay.
a label that's correct. And here's the explanation. So the LLM in our template, what we do is we ask it to provide an explanation. So the LLM like reasons just like a human would, and would have to type out, like if you asked a human to say, well, if you're going to provide a label as incorrect, I want you to explain why you think so, right? And that's exactly what it's done here. So in this case, it's generating without using the specified tools to answer the question. So there's there's a reason that it's giving here. But this is kind of, we're looking at one trace, right? So I can imagine it's probably pretty. It's going to be a long time just to kind of go through and figure out, hey, what do I need to fix here? I know I have a bunch of tools with some great explanations. So what we have is a really great tool. So we're all in on AI. So of course we have to have a Copilot, or
of course,
and we affectionately name it Alyx here that you can see at the top. So I've got this screen open here, and we can use Alyx for it's got over I think 30 different skills that you can use. And it carries context, right? So it's becoming more agentic as we, as we're evolving the product. But like in this case, like I've got my label, all my tool call incorrect right here. So I can kind of and here's some hints, right? Here, I can get some help. I can summarize my evals. I can debug things if I'm down to a specific trace. If I just want to ask it like or just analyze my tool calling. Maybe something as simple as that, right? That will, so Alyx will think, and let's see what it comes back with here. Let's see if I can make this a little larger. So I'll let it kind of do its thing, or maybe I'll just back out because this is annoying. But what we can see here is that we've got, some explanations. It's gone through all of the kind of tool calling incorrectness explanations. It's found some mismatches here between tool calling and question requirements. So there's a number of reasons that it's giving, and I can actually go through and basically use this as a way to sort of troubleshoot or just figure out what to do next, right? So, yeah, pretty useful there.
And one thing about those evals, I'm gonna ask a question that I know the answer to, but it's one of those things that our audience may not, right? And so, where did the evals come from, right? Like, so we have this eval that's there in the tool, but where does that actually come from? Where are you creating those? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, how do you create these evals, right? So again, I'll use the workflow. So we have this evals and tasks here. So we have this concept of tasks. So you see we're playing around with different kinds of evals, David. We're playing with the politeness one and prompt injections. We're just kind of having fun with some of these. But the idea here is you can set up a new task in our system. I'll do one real quick through the UI so you can see. So let's just actually, yeah, we could do that. Can
we make a Carter eval?
do that. Yeah, so we can do that. We can set this up on a project. So we'll just do that on our Arize
the Arize
agent. And actually, I could just show you the one that we created, but let's just actually go through kind of how we create one. And so this is going to run on the data as it comes in, right? So this is a nice thing. Like your trace data is flowing in through the instrumentation. So as the execution, like say this is in production and user transactions are naturally sending these traces into the platform, well, you don't have to worry about setting this up. Like there's this LLM as a judge we're going to set up, and we are going to run this on all our LLM calls, right? Or we can just kind of filter based on which ones we want. And then, we may want to run this on a portion or sample because this does generate additional LLM calls that you may want to, control with cost, but you can sample that how you wish. And then here you specify, it's really straightforward. You specify which LLM you want, right? So you can choose between OpenLLM, AI, or just whatever model you want. And then you can either choose a template, right? So we have, a number of pre-built templates on our own. So these are just kind of all different open source templates here. So if I have one for tool calling, what this will do is show a system prompt that we're going to provide that LLM. And the template, we call it a template because we're actually allowing it to insert these variables. And this is going to come from the trace data. So, in observability, we talked about you need to collect all the data, and then evals will let you evaluate that data. Right? So this data comes from the trace or the span. This is in the form of the user question. So that populates this, system prompt, and then, or this, eval template. And then you have the final tool call, right, which is the result of the LLM output, and then it has a choice of different tools to kind of definitions that it can come up with. So this kind of blurb here basically is, we're asking the LLM to reason, read these different things, explain itself, right, and come to a label of correct or incorrect right here. So that's really all it is, right?
Now the other day I was in here and I was, I've got some existing apps that I've built, right? All agentic and everything. And
Yeah.
one in particular, I noticed that I was getting some interesting inputs from actual real users, ones that look like they could potentially be like a prompt injection attack or something like that. And so if you go over to the right, I want to see this. I found up in the top right-hand corner, where'd it go? The little button for Alyx. There.
Oh yeah, there you go.
That you can just talk to Alyx and say, I want to create I want to create an eval that does this. I was actually super impressed. Like what it created for me work. Not only did it work, but it was actually super comprehensive. I was like, I thought that was really neat. Might be worth like kind of showing that real quick.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought we were doing one on politeness. I remember we were doing a couple. I think
we did do one on politeness. Yeah.
But you can ask it to create any eval that you want, and it will do its job, right, to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So to go through this and like say, oh, I'm going to structure this correctly. Well, maybe add a little boo boo there. But yeah, to do and actually kind of create that on your own is could be a lot of work there basically to do that. But we create the templates there that to help you do that. So
it actually just brings up a completely fascinating conversation. We don't even have time to talk about like prompt injection, but like
that's a whole nother.
Oh, that's
because it's like I forgot about it, right? It's like as a web developer, we had like a decade of sort of SQL inject various forms of injection, and then like all of the frameworks and tools that we as web developers use like got super hardened, right? Where it just sort of other than like legacy code that was still floating around, like it just really evaporated as a problem. And then like now, thanks to this new world, right? There's like just yet again like another form of injection that we have to work out for, and one that's kind of like it's like more insidious, right? Like SQL injection is like actually relatively easy to sanitize, it's like, but prompt injection, it's just hard. It's not like it's impossible, right? But like it's harder because there's more subtlety that's possible as compared with like the delete star from users or whatever. So
yeah, for sure. There's that's a whole nother section, right? Or just security in general, guardrails, different ways to detect it. I mean, LLM as a judge is pretty good at that. And the key thing is that you can kind of like, use these evaluations to kind of help you sort of initially grab that data. But, you have to remember that these, even the evals are using LLMs behind it. So you have to, like in our world, we're constantly sort of like evaluating the evaluator, so to speak, to make sure that is, doing its job. And there's, you're constantly improving the evaluations as well and tuning them. So that's kind of a help.
Quick question. I mean, it's kind of amazing, like all the stuff that a developer is going to kind of like get for free just by setting a couple of environment variables, in their sort of framework of choice, right? This is like basically nothing you've showed us is specific to Langflow, right? I mean, this is the Arize is obviously compatible with like every major agentic and AI platform. I am wondering, like, are there parts of Arize where like you do unlock really interesting capabilities if you're more proactive as an engineer? Like, are there SDKs or APIs that just sort of, if you actually like take the time to write some code or wire them up, where you can do even more interesting things?
I mean, I think your question goes to like, how do you get more out of the system? So like the idea, I think for us is that we're evolving to as well. So I like to use Alyx, the assistant, as kind of an example of that, because we're not limiting it now, I think, to how folks use are developing in their platform. So you don't necessarily need to kind of come into this UI anymore, right, to get value out of this. For example, let me see if I've got my screen share up. But like we're making a lot of we're making Alyx available as an MCP server, right? So
Really?
here,
Oh, that's super cool.
so like I can add it to like my Cloud Code instance here. And what I've been using it a lot for is just kind of doing some of the code work to help me instrument applications, right? So got a simple notebook and I want to, for this demo, for example, and I kind of want to instrument it. And I want to let kind of the Cloud Code kind of be an agent and maybe do some of the work to instrument it for me. So
I get it. Okay, so you just brought up something super interesting there, because like I've been working, I know we've been focused on the pure Arize. I've been working with Phoenix, right? Which is, as you explained earlier, is the kind of like the more pure developer OSS kind of path here. And one of the things when I was creating my own LLM as a judge code, right? It's not terrible. It's not terribly hard or anything like that, but you do have to sit down and kind of like figure out the prompt and the format. What I think I just heard you say though, was that I could potentially hook up to Alyx over MCP in my coding IDE and actually possibly just say, hey, I want to create a judge that does this. Can you whip this up for me?
But I think Alyx is not a feature of Phoenix. Alyx is probably a feature of like Arize, right? Am I right in understand that, Rich?
Yeah, it is a feature of Arize, but we are making these available kind of as services, through MCP as well, right? So
cool.
this feature that you're seeing here is like our tracing assistant. That we basically, it has that skill that we expose it so that it can be accessible in your, your favorite. Yeah.
Are we, and Rich, I want to make sure we're seeing what you're seeing. So like right now, I'm still seeing the window that says like prompt playground.
Oh, you are.
Yeah, sorry. I had a feeling that you had switched something, but you only shared the window that we got like.
All right, I'll flash it real quick. I don't want to take the whole thing, but
we weren't seeing the window into Alex's soul.
That's right. The full, Rich is gonna give us the full Monty. So hopefully there are no API keys.
Awesome, by the way.
There you go.
Got it. Sorry about that. Yeah,
there you go. Okay.
I didn't even know what I was talking about. Yeah, so I got my Cloud Code here environment. This is hooked up to kind of our tracing assistant, which is skill of Alyx, and so I can just ask it. Like I was just basically asking it to give me a recommendation on how to instrument a LangChain map, right? And so it gives me all the code here to do it. But, this is agentic as well. Cloud Code can actually go and like make the code changes for me. I've had that, do that, but I just kind of wanted to show just like quickly how, it has access to all of our skills, right? You can leverage that in Cloud Code and actually kind of like have a tracing assistant do a lot of the work. And that's something I'm playing around with a lot.
Great. I just built a GitHub repository that does evals in Langflow and implemented with Arize, and I was using Arize Phoenix. Or is it just And what I need to know about this MCP server and where it is, because it sounds like what I'm hearing is that I could probably have it analyze and review my code for the LLM as judges, for the data sets, all that kind of stuff, and make sure I'm kind of doing that the best way.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great.
Anyway, cool stuff, right? So I'm super excited. Product is evolving, and we're really trying to, have more AI provide a lot of the insights, like the thing I showed you earlier about kind of, tell me what I need to go fix, right? Tell me what I should be working on, and get those insights from the trace data. But evaluations, I mentioned, are the feedback that the LLM or Alyx can use to basically surface these insights. And so that's another piece of it.
Nice. I think you can probably stop sharing your screen now, Rich.
Okay. Yeah.
Got like we can sort of get a fun sort of like infinite, thing happening.
And anytime I see infinite recursion, it reminds me of camcorders from the 90s and pointing them back towards the TV as you're recording. It was like the best thing in the world back then.
Oh, dude. Oh man, we had a camcorder for like a minute, and
you would go infinitely into the TV. It was awesome.
Yeah, I'm like, we never did that. That's oh man, what a miss. I think I guess like even the pre-electronic version, you just kind of do the in between two mirrors thing,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of a fun effect. Oh, by the way, I found the meme. I know everyone's been on.
You're gonna share it?
Everyone,
share it.
well, I mean, obviously everyone's been on pins and needles. They're like, oh, Carter, I have to see the meme.
Everyone stopped listening because they were waiting for this meme. Really?
Yeah, that's right. So it's the yo dog meme, right? So yo dog, I heard you like LLM, so I put some LLM in your LLM so you can AI while you AI, right?
Oh, there you go.
I'm
That's
sorry. I have kids. So it's just sort of memes are just a big part of our lives. And I always feel bad like when I'm so bad at like naming them, right? I can visualize it in my head, right? By the way, that was not Method Man. That was Exhibit. So apologies, Exhibit, for sort of for giving somebody else credit for your meme brilliance. But well, Rich, this is just so awesome. Like, thank you so much for joining us.
absolutely.
It's so funny. Like every episode kind of ends a little bit the same way. I feel like we just see a bunch of cool stuff, and then like I have this like giant to-do list like of like, oh man, like I need to go like try this stuff out, right? Because David and I, because of like what we do for a living is as developer relations engineers, like we're just building software all the time, right? Building demos, kind of building sort of like hopefully like examples of the art of the possible for developers in the AI space. And because of it, and because you're kind of pushing the envelope, like, you are just constantly like running into these like hard edges, and like things are not working as you expect, and you're ripping your hair out. And like all engineers and like all developers, like you start to try to figure out how to debug things, right? Like, oh, why isn't it working? How can I figure out why it's not working, right? um and I think like what I and it's funny, like I just remember in the old days, the way that you solved the problem was by sprinkling, console.log or something
Yeah.
similar, like literally throughout your application,
Yep.
to the point where you've got like thousands or tens of thousands of these login statements, and then you would use increasingly sophisticated like tools to like differentiate between like infos and warns and errors, and you get to the point where half of your code was just login. So it's
So
just
true.
it's just it's like magical, that like there are these ways that you can kind of just drop in a couple environment variables and sort of for free, get access to like all this really good stuff. So
Yeah.
it was this is just a totally awesome conversation. I think David I think we had some stuff we wanted to share with folks before we signed off, right?
We do. Rich, I think you've got some QR codes to throw up on the screen for folks,
Sure.
so they can figure out how to get both to Arize and Phoenix, right?
Yeah, I can do that.
Pop those up.
Let me do that now.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that these links are in the show notes for folks that are listening on the podcast.
You see-
But yeah, there we go. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so it looks like on the left, developers can sign up for a free Arize account on the pink QR code on the left, and then on the right, it'll send you to more information about Phoenix, which is sort of their open source tools. Yeah, we'll kind of leave that up until we sign off. But Rich, thanks again for coming on. I hope it was. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I kind of promised you that this would be sort of like fun, and relaxed, and I hope you felt that way, because it was great to meet you in the first place, and then just kind of like hear about Arize and sort of see all the cool stuff that devs can do with it.
Yeah, I love it. Had a really great time. You guys make it fun. So anytime you guys want me back, I'll definitely join up, man.
Yeah, we'll sign up for next week. We'll do one right away next week.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, it's so funny. Like, no, sincerely, like I've never we're like, I think we all kind of aged ourselves a little bit, right? I've been in, I got my first job in tech in the year 2000, right? I've never ever seen this industry, have seen things move this fast in this industry. And that includes all the big stuff. That includes like the web exploding, and that includes mobile exploding, and that includes the cloud. Just every single wave, like, even like the API explosion, right? The Twilios and the Stripes and all that stuff. Like those all are like almost glacial compared to how things are operating in AI. So yeah, Rich, like we totally can talk to you in like 3 months, because I fully expect Arize will be, like meaningfully different, right? And like you will have solved like a completely new set of problems for developers, right? And I think that's part of like why David and I wanted to work on this podcast, right? Like look, for better or for worse, like if you're an engineer in this space, like part of your full-time job is learning new things on a pretty regular basis. I have a lot of empathy for the fact that that can be really stressful for engineers. It can be really time consuming, and I've got a lot of empathy for that. The good news is that it can also be exciting, because like learning should be exciting, right? So it's like there's pros and cons. Yeah, so yeah, we'll schedule like a 6-month slot, and then we can't wait to see what's new with you and the team at Arize.
So cool. Awesome.
Cool.
Great talking
All right,
to you.
folks. All right. Well, this is me and David signing off, and we will see you all next time for the next episode of The Flow. Thanks for
See
coming.
y'all.
See
Happy
ya.
coding.
Take care.